Welcome to another example from Too Tall Toby. This is from his March 6th live challenge. This is a pretty simple model. We're going to show you how to build this in IronCAD. If you watch his video, he'll show you how he designed this in IronCAD and some of the pitfalls that you might find in, he'll design it in SolidWorks and show you some of the pitfalls you might find. But really, this is fairly simple. You have a cylinder for a starting point. You have another cylinder. It's got some tangencies here on these two pieces. Then we have another cylindrical with some straight connected tangencies here. And then the really interesting one is this rib feature, because you want to have a nice smooth alignment here. You don't have extra geometry. And of course, if you're aligning to the midpoint of this and you do an extrude, bidirectional extrude, you're going to get a little bit of extra geometry or missing geometry. So we'll talk about how we did this in IronCAD versus how it was done in SolidWorks. So here we go. Let's go ahead and hop into IronCAD. I'll move this over. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is going to start with a cylinder, just like he did in SolidWorks, but we're going to just start with a catalog drag and drop of a cylinder, and we can simply select on that, type in the value for the diameter, which is 2, and then the height of this guy is setting at 2.5. So we'll go ahead and set that up to start off with. Next, we know there's another cylinder out to the right that's 3 inches off, so we'll go ahead and turn on a tri-ball on, and we can use a tri-ball to create geometry just simply by right-clicking and dragging, and we can make a copy of this guy. That's 3 units from center to center. Then we can select on this cylinder and simply change its values, that we know that this diameter on this guy is actually 1, and it's got a value inside of here of height of 0.5. So we'll go ahead and change those values to set that up. That kind of gives us the base there. And since we're working with the cylinders, I'll go ahead and do the other one as well. So let's go ahead and drag another cylinder. I'm going to drop it on the center of the top. We can drop it on the bottom, it doesn't really matter, but I'm just going to use that and just rotate it over by using the tri-ball. I can lock an axis and simply rotate it down 90 degrees. And we're going to move this here in a second, so but let me show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to set the diameter of this guy, which is 0.625 times 2, because it's got a radius value of 0.625, and it's got a height value of 1 for that. So we're going to set that value. So now we're just going to move it back a half an inch, so we can move that back with the tri-ball. And now we can position this guy. So we know from the center and out, we know it's 1.5, so we can just drag that out, up to 1.5. And we know that the bottom needs to be tangent to the bottom of this. So what we can do with the tri-ball is we can actually hit the space bar to deactivate it, and we can align it to the bottom or the tangency of the cylinder, hit the space bar again, and now we are spacebar again. Now we are moving it and just snapping it down to the bottom of our geometry. So that essentially gives us our basis for our cylinder back here. So let's go ahead and finish this one off. So we're going to go ahead and edit the cross section by hitting Alt-E. That'll put us in the cross section mode. And now we can draw a line here. We can do it from our ribbon bars, or we can just hit the S key and we're going to do a line here. And we're just going to draw this out off of this tangent. And we're going to do the same here until it aligns, and then just close it off there. Next, we can go ahead and trim that. Again, we can just hit the S key, hit the trim command, and we're going to trim off that center. So that gives us our basic shape for that particular element. So that will give us that. Last, we're going to do this bottom piece here before we get to our rib. So we're going to do that bottom piece. And to do that, we're just going to essentially go to the bottom here. And we're going to do an extrude command on this. So we're going to go ahead and hit extrude. It's going to ask us, do we want to create a new part or do you want to add it to the existing? We'll just select this one and we're going to add it as a feature to this. And we're going to create a 2D shape on this guy. And we'll just select this bottom point here. It doesn't really matter where, but any one of these faces is fine. And hit OK. So now we're in the sketch mode. And what we want to do is actually project these two curves for reference. So we're going to do constraints. We want that real geometry. So we're going to project that and this edge here. And you'll see that this creates a little red icon there for us telling us it's a constraint geometry. And now we're going to use a tangent line. So this is found on our ribbon bar under our 2-point. There's a tangent line. And what the tangent line does is when you select on any curve, it automatically creates a tangent to it. As you can see that little blue indicator on the left of my line. And then I can just move over until I find the tangency on this one. So I can see that blue indicator again. And when I click, I will create both of those as a locked constraint here. And you can do the same on the other end of the curve, just picking the curve. And then coming over to the other one, finding that location and clicking that. So now we know those are tangent in there. And if you're ever curious, you can go into the right-click menu and go to Constraints. And this is how you can set up certain options to be automatically constrained by default. So like horizontal and verticals, tangencies, any of these can be set on by default if you like. So anyways, I have those defaults on for tangency because they come in handy. And now I'm just going to trim off the excess geometry. So I don't need this piece here or that inside of there or this outside circle. I just need this interior piece. So we're just going to go ahead and finish. This will put us in the extrude command, and if we go to our property browser, we can see this values. I've got it set to 0.5 already, which is our correct thickness, but it's going in the wrong direction, so we can just reverse it and hit OK. So now that will create our geometry there. So we've got our smooth tangencies and everything for our geometry for the basis part of this. Last is this rib part. So let's go ahead and go into this. So I will go into my shapes catalog, and if you scroll down, you'll see one called rib inside of here, and you can just drag and drop this out onto the center point so it aligns us in the right center location. And it's gone the wrong way, so I'm just going to turn the tribal on, lock our rotation axis, and I'm just going to say reverse that. So now it's in the right orientation, and now we have to do some of the adjustments here because we know we have an angle that we need to define, and we actually want this edge here to be penetrating this curve here, not the actual center point. And what's nice about our rib feature is it's not set up to be a mid-plane extrude. It's actually doing one direction, but set the handles to do symmetrical. So I can place it in the center and size it correctly, but it's always extruding from one side. So what we want to first do is actually set our value. So you can see that the handle's already set like this to move symmetrically. So we can just select that, type in 0.25 for that symmetrical. But again, our profile is in the right location. So what we want to do is edit that. So we'll go into Alt-E to edit that cross section. And a couple things here. We're just going to lock some things here. We're going to lock down our horizontal and our vertical. Vertical and horizontal in these cases, and we want this point here, so we want this to move. If we change this angle or change this location, we don't want this to move. We're just going to make sure that it's coincident with our x-axis. So that will lock us there. Next, we'll go ahead and put our smart dimension on here for our angle, and we know that angle is 59, so we'll just select that, type in 59. And last, we want this point to be penetrating this arc. So what we do is a penetration point, select that point and select that arc, and it will move it over to that location. And since this is vertical, it shifts it over as well. And now we're kind of fully defined because we have this coincident. This is defining with its location, and that's basically where it needs to be. So we'll hit finish, and that gives us the shape. And just as he pointed out in his video, it'll create this extra geometry here, and there's multiple ways that you can get that geometry cut off there. One of the things about IronCAD is these shapes. It's very easy to do, is we can just use a cut extrude. We can just drag and drop that on here, and wait to say OK. For the default size of that, it's moving or cutting into the geometry, as you can see if I rotate around so you can see that. So all we want to do is reverse that, so we can just right click on it and say flip. So it's actually cutting towards me. You can see the arrow. So it's cutting from that face where it was dropped onto and up. So it essentially just cuts that geometry off, and that's all it takes to remove that extra geometry. And now last, we just have to add our holes here, and we can use we have a through hole under our starter catalog that you can access just simply by just drag and dropping onto the center point here, and it has a value of 0.5 diameter, which this one's already set up by default at 0.5 for this shape. Same here, this is a 0.5 diameter, and then we drop it again up here on our top. In that case, that one needs to be a 1 inch diameter hole. So that's basically our shape. The last thing we need to do is just cut here, and we'll just do an extruded, what we're going to do is we're just going to drop it here in the center. So we got a reference point, that's our center point. We're going to drop that there. And now that we have it there, we can just position this however we like. We know it's going to cut all the way through here, and we can just snap that over to our center point there as well. So that's going to cut through that. Let's make sure we got this in the actual center point. I might have missed that slightly, so let's make sure we are in the center point. There we go. So now we are in the center point of that, and now we've got it positioned. We just need to set its value. So if we right click and drag this, we can see that it's sizing symmetrically, and that value for that is 0.125, and we can set that. So that's going to cut all the way through our geometry from the center point there. So you can snap to these points here, the center points. These points, anywhere that you would drag and drop, you've got those precise locations. Or you can drop it anywhere, use a tribal to snap it either way. So that kind of builds your shape. Last we need to do is set some material settings here. So I always just go to the materials, and we're going to type in 2,700 kilograms there. And if you tab over there, that'll give you the value there, which is 0.838 for the calculated mass in pounds. So that's kind of giving you the value there. In IronCAD, so you can see it there, or you can go to the property browser, it will list it there as well. It should be 0.83809 is what the value should be. So there you go. That's how you can build this model in IronCAD, and you can watch again on Too Tall Toby's video on how he builds it with SolidWorks, and this is just a different approach using more or less drag and drop catalog items and some extrude shapes and editing shapes. Hope you enjoy.